Hi all. My name's Emma Wright Phillips. I'm going to be talking to you about our teaching and learning at Baysgarth. There's a couple of other people who are important in the teaching and learning process and protocols at Baysgarth. So Hannah Burnham will be able to answer any of your questions regarding teaching and learning, as well as Charlotte Fretwell. So seek any of us out, we are more than happy to help. And to be honest, all of our staff at Baysgarth will use the same principles of teaching and learning. So please do feel free to ask anybody for their help and guidance when coming to plan lessons. So our teaching and learning principles are all based around our Baysgarth learning model. So we had a group of staff work a few years ago to develop a learning model whereby it is based around the science of learning and how people learn and not just perform short term, but actually master these skills and the knowledge, and it is long lasting learning. So our aims when we developed this learning model were the following. So we have to maximise the effectiveness of learning process for all students. We have a huge variety of students in our school from various different backgrounds, lots of different abilities, and we need to make sure that this learning model allowed those students to learn. We want to allow students to acquire this deep knowledge. And what I mean by this is not just having a knowledge whereby it's superficial, but whereby they can apply their knowledge to unfamiliar situations, as well as it being long lasting. We've just talked about the science of learning, and so everything that our learning model surrounds and encompasses is the science of learning. It is understood by every member of staff. When you are new to the school, you will do a lot of CPD on the Baysgarth learning model. So after this session, if you're not 100% sure about it, part of your induction programme, your CPD for the first year with us, is to look a little bit more deeply at the learning model, so that you're able to apply it in your planning and your lessons. We think it's really important to allow creativity and innovation when we're coming to teach. We are all creative individuals and we are all different, and that means that we do not prescribe the way that everyone should teach. We believe that everyone should have autonomy over how they teach and to have that creativity. So although everybody uses the learning model, you will notice that people use it slightly differently, although every single use of it underpins the same principles. Although we do allow creativity and innovation, there is an importance for consistency. So we need to have that same language of learning. So our students are involved in this as well, and they understand the language of learning. So when we are in our practice phase of learning, the students understand what's expected of them. When they're in their application of learning phase, the students again will know what is expected of them. Here is our learning model. So it's been through several updates in the last few years. We like to make sure that it's always current and up to date. Our most recent edit of this is to include trauma-informed practice, making sure that those students who have experienced trauma in their life are still able to achieve success and to feel what success, to see what it looks like. So the parts in the middle, those little triangles in the centre of your learning model in front of you, these are our different phases of learning. And we always start off with a retrieve and connect. So every single lesson or every single learning episode, and a learning episode doesn't actually have to be 1 hour lesson. A learning episode is a complete cycle of this learning model. And it may take 1 lesson, it may take more. So the retrieve and connect is so vastly important in terms of obtaining acquire knowledge from students. If they've got something to grasp hold of that they understand, they're able to use that in the lesson, and it's going to help them to learn the new content within the lesson later on. It also helps with those mental models. If a student has a weak mental model, they're not able to make connections, and if they're not able to make connections, this longer lasting learning that we've talked about is not going to happen. We then model and discover new information and new skills and new knowledge, and this can be done in a variety of ways. It may be teacher-led, it may be not appropriate for it to be teacher-led, but via discovery of the students themselves. Once this new knowledge or skill is imparted onto the students, they will get time to practice. Now, this practice is a low-stakes environment, so there is no risk associated with it. There can be scaffolding for students who may require it. There will be support for those students, and it is just repetitive practice in order to be able to start mastering a skill or some knowledge. There will always be a checkpoint after practice. And this is really, really important, because before they start to apply their new knowledge, we need to make sure that they're comfortable in their new understanding. If they're not comfortable in their new understanding and they still rely on scaffolding, they still rely on external help, then they're not going to survive it, they're not going to see success in their application stage. So at the point of the checkpoint, it may be that some are ready to move on and apply their understanding. It may be that some of the students in the room are not ready for that application. So that's why there's that double-headed arrow there, because you could to and fro between these three areas: the practice, the checkpoint 2, and the application stage. Only when the students are ready to apply should they go on to do that. The application stage is, again, very, very important. It allows us to be able to check that the students understand everything that has been put in front of them in an unfamiliar situation and without any help. So without any collaboration from students, without any help from their previous notes or from any sort of scaffolding or templates that they've been using previously in the practice stage. And then finally, obviously, we'll have a checkpoint, so some sort of assessment for learning to ensure that what they've written in their application stage is correct. All the various things in the purple circle around the outside, so mixed ability, Kagan, literacy, numeracy, trauma informed, and oracy, will all play a part in many, many lessons that we deliver here at Baysgarth. And again, you will see it regardless of what department you're in and what type of subject that is being taught. And we'll talk more about mixed ability later on, and talk more about Kagan later on as well. But we feel that obviously numeracy and literacy is vastly important when it comes to every single subject. Literacy underpins everything. If they're not able to understand text, if they're not able to articulate what they want to say, then they're going to struggle in every single subject. So it's important for us, regardless of what department we are in, that we support literacy in our lessons. So when we come to plan lessons, we use the Baysgarth learning model in order to help plan. But we might not necessarily plan it in the order which it looks on the Baysgarth learning model. So I'm just going to take you through all the different stages of how people plan here at Baysgarth. And stage 1 is all about lesson outcome. So what do we want our students to be able to do with their new skills by the end of the session? What are our objectives? Once we've worked this out, we then go straight to the application task. In order to be able to demonstrate those skills or knowledge at the end of the session that we've just looked at, how can they go about doing this? What application task will allow them to demonstrate the outcome of the lesson? That application task will be one where, again, there are no scaffolding, there is no external help on it. This is for them to be able to prove that they have mastered the learning and they're able to carry out a certain skill or they understand the knowledge that has been provided. We like to put the application task first because at the end of the day, that is what we measure success on, is whether they're able to complete an application task or not. So once we've worked out our application task, we then look at what our success criteria is in order to be able to demonstrate to the students what they need to do to experience this success. This has to be really, really clear so the students know exactly what they need to do. From the success criteria, we then need to think about how we model that new piece of information or type of skill. Is it going to be a one-step? Is it going to be teacher-led? Is it going to be something that they discover as a group together? Once we've worked out how we're going to impart the new knowledge to them or the new skill, then we give them time to practice. So what type of activities will allow them to practice these new skills or this new knowledge repetitively in order to be able to master it? We also need to think about how we'll be able to determine if they are secure in their knowledge and understanding before we move on. And then finally, although this comes first in every single lesson of ours or every single learning episode, our Refresh and Connect will probably be the last point in which we plan. And the reason for that is because our Refresh and Connect needs to provide them with a reminder and a retrieval of what they already know, which can connect to the success criteria of this lesson. So what have they already learned in the past that will be able to allow them to make that connection? The more connections they can make, the stronger their learning and longer lasting their learning will be. What hooks can we use? Are there any other subjects that would deliver something similar that they've already completed? So that Refresh and Connect, although again it's the last part of our planning sequence, it is again really important that we're able to connect to prior knowledge. On here, what we've got is a variety of different statements, which when you arrive at Baysgarth and when you start your BLM, your Baysgarth Learning Model CPD, you'll be given a document which has all of the student actions, teacher actions, and expectations for each part of the Baysgarth Learning Model and for each episode of learning. We've got a selection of them here. And what I'd like to do is you're going to pause the video for a moment and have a little read of these statements and then decide from what I've talked about already, is it a statement which reflects the retrieval and connect, or refresh and connect? Is it a statement that describes the practice stage? Is it a statement that reflects the model stage of learning? So just pause the video now and have a little look at those to determine whether you think you can identify the different stages of learning from these statements. Now that you've had a look at this video and you've had a look at these statements, when you can use these statements when you go to one of your first Baysgarth Learning Model CPD sessions, and they'll, like I said earlier, they're going to be going into more depth about each learning phase and what is expected from the students, what those actions are from the students, and what the actions are of the teacher. So it will become really, really clear very quickly what is expected from your planning and from your delivery of your lessons. We mentioned earlier that we are an absolute advocate for mixed ability teaching. Now, in a lot of subjects, all the way up to GCSE level, they will be mixed ability. And the rationale behind this is to make sure that we have quality in education. We found that in the past, and research has also showed, that low attaining students will suffer when they are streamed by ability. And this will have a long-term negative impact on engagement and attitude to learning. We often end up with a group that would often be deemed the sink group. And then that means expectations and standards become a lot lower. And that means for these students, experience of learning is not always a positive one. We know that students have a bigger range of complex and diverse needs, which means that mainstream classes are now more challenging to teach. But with the right mix of students, we can make sure that our mixed ability teaching is effective and that we teach to the top and we scaffold all the way up to the top for those students who can't reach the top directly. So we have high expectations of every single one of our students, regardless of whether they are low ability, high ability, or regardless of whatever need that they have. We fully 100% need to have mixed ability teaching to be able to teach to the top for every single student. Every student deserves high quality teaching. So we've already talked about a little of these, about sync group as well. We need to have some improved behaviour in some groups, and when you don't concentrate low ability into one set, we've got lots more positive role models around and lots of less negative influences, which means that classes are more easily managed, and there are, like we said, there are some positive role models within every single class. Different teaching styles are encouraged so that we have more collaborative approaches. We'll talk about Kagan shortly. But if you have what they call, again, a sync group, then often we steer away from these types of different teaching styles because it's deemed more risky. But we like to encourage collaborative approach in every single one of our lessons. There is potentially less negative labelling of students, and that means that their confidence will be much higher if they're not given a label of low ability. And also, teachers have contact with a wider range of students, and what this means is we are upskilling all of our staff. There's no doubt that when we first started mixed ability teaching, a lot of people struggled, we all struggled to adapt to it. But now we're a few years down the line, and I think that it has become easier. We know what's expected of us, and it has definitely upskilled us in terms of our teaching to the top and being able to scaffold. So just a few moments on Kagan and why it's important. So Kagan is a collaborative learning style. We are huge advocates of oracy at our school, and these are a couple of reasons why. So speech is a primary mechanism for thought, and therefore it's vitally important for children to have the opportunity to talk through their ideas with one another. If you get students to challenge each other, they absolutely will. And have these oracy skills is so vitally important, not just in school, but throughout the rest of their lives. And the second statement, putting children together and then assuming they will interact and support each other's learning is another matter altogether. So when we talk about Kagan and collaborative learning, we're not talking about group work. Group work is unstructured. You will usually have what we call hogs and logs in group work. And what they are people or students who have the hogs who take over and they do all the work. And then we have the students who return the logs, and they sit there and allow the hogs to take over. And what that means is they don't have individual accountability. And it also means that not every one of those students in there is working hard to progress. So Kagan's different because it is a really structured, collaborative approach. It is underlined by 4 basic principles. So we have positive interdependence, and that means they are working together, but they have individual accountability. So although they might have to produce a piece of work together as a group, they are all held accountable for various different parts of that work, or parts of the performance that lead to that piece of work being produced. There has to be equal participation. Now, when you get used to the Kagan structures, you will realise very quickly that actually this is quite easily done, because the way that they're structured ensures that everybody has a role in their group. And then simultaneous interaction. So this means that even if there is one person per group working, at any one time in a lesson, then, and the groups are of 4 students, 25% of the room will be working at any one time. But that's quite rare, because you will often find that there will be some simultaneous interaction. So it isn't just a one-by-one principle whereby one person's working, 3 others are listening. Every single person will be working at all times in that group. They'll just have different roles essentially. These are all the different types of cabin structures that we routinely plan into our lessons, and you'll find these used across the school, regardless of subject or department, or whether it's a practical subject or a theoretical subject or a skill-based subject. Part of your induction programme will be to learn about these structures, and you'll be given a couple to learn, to go away and deliberately practice in your classrooms, and to come back and reflect on how it went and how we can refine the process. So don't worry if these are not familiar with you. They absolutely will be by the end of your first year at Baysgarth. Moving on to how we measure the quality of teaching over time. We realise that a one-off observation, maybe once or twice a year, is probably not giving us the best picture of typical teaching over the year. And we also realised as well a few years ago that actually quality assurance shouldn't be something that we're frightened of or fear. It should be an opportunity for development. So with this in mind, we developed what we call our teaching over time process, and it promotes this self-improving culture among our staff. And it really does work, and it started to infiltrate more now to all the new staff that come to us. A lot of people are worried still by observations, but when they realise the process of teaching over time and how it works, they actually realise that it is a development process rather than judgmental. So as a teacher, you will be in charge of your teaching over times, okay? Or the vast majority of your teaching over times. Part of the form, which I'll show you in a moment, are questions for the observer to come in and to ask yourself, to ask the students, and to obviously write down any notes that they see during the lesson. And it's a way of capturing evidence of what they see of good, positive teaching. Nothing negative is written on these forms. It is also a chance for the member of staff to say, right, I haven't had anybody in the classroom to see me doing Hagen, for example, or I've not shown any evidence of reciprocal reading. So therefore, they would invite someone to come in and to do a learning walk or a teaching over time form with them. And that makes you master of your own destiny, really. It gives you the autonomy to be able to say, right, this is what I need to show, or this is what I'd like to improve on. So I know that my strength perhaps doesn't lie in practical work. So you'd get somebody to come in and have a little look, and then there would be a development conversation that follows that. What it isn't is somebody coming in, judging you on your teaching, writing up an observation, and then leaving and nothing happening from it. At the end of the TOT form, although there are no negative comments to make on it, there is no room for negative comments. It is all positive statements that will inspire and motivate everyone to develop their practice, regardless of who they are and how long they've been teaching. But at the end of the form, there is a chance for the observer to ask a reflective question. So if they think that something in the lesson, there was a hinge point in the lesson where it didn't go quite as planned, rather than saying that, there would be a reflective question. This reflective question will then go to the person who's been observed, and they're able to think about it. They also have a self-reflection form to fill in, and which will then be passed to the person who has been observed. And then from that, any more coaching conversations can happen. We think it's a really, really valuable way of doing quality assurance without that fear of being judged. And we often find that we are welcomed into lessons at any point to see what is being showcased around the classroom and around the school. Have a look at the observation form. So it'll take you through some questions. It'll take you through as well. It'll take you through some questions that you need to ask the students as well as an observer, so the students get their say as well. It is just a Google form, as you can see in front of you. And then, like as I say at the end, it will get submitted. You'll fill in a self-reflection form, and the observer will get your form. You'll get their observation, and any coaching conversations can happen following that. So that is all from me in terms of teaching and learning. So I'd like to say thank you for listening and watching, and I look forward to meeting you.